Or staying with the distribution of those funds, President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday vowing that those will be monitored in real time and described corruption as a source of shame for governments. Well, what exactly is needed to ensure that audits are run real time of the distribution of these funds? Saica's Project Director of Assurance, Thando Myoli, joins us now. Thando, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Look, in layman's terms, right, we hear the promise and the commitment that has been made by the President. The Auditor General is going to be auditing real time, he says. The Portfolio Committee is also going to be monitoring. There's so many different oversight mechanisms that we've been told about. But in as far as what needs to go into the books, how do we ensure that the right, mechanisms are in place to ensure that this will in fact be the case?
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, and good evening to all of the viewers as well. So, Kathy, the audit process has always been, traditionally, you've always found auditors coming in at the end of the financial year. And obviously, a lot of stuff has taken place during the year, building up to those numbers that we ultimately see reported in the financial statements. I think what the President is alluding to is more of the real-time audits, where the auditors do not only come in at the end of the year, but they actually monitor the spending as it is being utilized by the respective departments. So I guess it's not a new concept. It's certainly a growing concept, not just in South Africa, but globally as well, particularly because of, I guess, the emergence of technology that enables those types of audits to be conducted. So I think in terms of some of the benefits that we can see from these types of audits, I think definitely one, more interactions between the auditors as well as the clients that are responsible for producing the numbers and utilizing the spend as well. But I think also more importantly, more timely accountability, because as the auditors are now looking at these transactions real time or on a real-time basis, they're able to kind of enforce that accountability on the spot instead of having to wait for the end of the financial period to come through. So I think there definitely are benefits. We also saw with the work that the Auditor General also did on the COVID-19 funds that were allocated. So there was a lot of benefits that came through, and I think the President has seen that, and he's kind of looking for similar processes to kind of follow suit as well for the funds in KZN.
I want to take this example of the COVID-19 funds, Thando, because even though we had a much deeper involvement of the Auditor General in terms of watching what was being done, it didn't stop the corruption from taking place. And we know that with the types of allocations of budget that we're seeing, it's across all three spheres of government. You have national allocations, you have provincial allocations, and of course you have, monies that are going directly to municipalities. So the oversight that needs to be conducted is really great. And one of the key things that has consistently been highlighted by the Auditor General is that we don't have capacity when it comes to the financial management systems within our government. And that's why, you'll have departments and municipalities that have such high bills for getting auditors, independent auditors, to come and do their books when they have people who are employed and earning salaries but are seemingly not able to do that work.
I guess that's always been an issue. I think it's not just government. You've mentioned the three tiers of government, but also within the private space as well. And I think the one thing that we should always remember is that the audit profession, I guess, it exists as part of an ecosystem. So one, you've got your management, and I think that's where you're kind of alluding to. The management that are actually responsible for receiving these funds, accounting for them, and also ensuring that they do deliver on the projects that they're supposed to deliver on. But the audit, I guess the audit is part of that ecosystem, and definitely I think it's probably not a function that can get rid of corruption completely, but definitely in terms of enforcing some of the accountability, I think we do have a role to play as the auditing profession to make sure that as the gatekeepers of integrity in society, when we do a kind of pick up some of those fraudulent issues on negligence, because there's a number of factors that lead to irregular expenditure, etc. That as the gatekeepers, I guess, of for society, that we are able to identify those issues and blow the whistle and make them known to the public. Because ultimately, I guess the profession exists to protect the interests of the public. But in terms of the auditors themselves being able to eradicate corruption, I think that we need a number of other role players to come to the ball and really to contribute. But we exist as part of an ecosystem, and we need to make sure that all of those role players do play their part in combating corruption.
The issue you're raising is such an important one because often we've seen disclosures that are withheld at whatever level of the audit process are concerned that frustrate the work of auditors, and sometimes there isn't effective bookkeeping. People don't want to say how much they're paying for whatever services they're procuring, and that in and of itself has become a very contentious issue where in some instances you have the Auditor General making no findings either on an entity, again, or a municipality simply because they've not submitted anything, or the data that they've submitted simply is unreliable.
Yeah, and that's where I guess the role of those who send the auditors to do their role, so Parliament and the public, the President in this case, in terms of the KZN funds, and I think that's where their role comes in terms of when the AG does report these issues, that people do account, and that there must be consequences for those issues. I mean, year after year, we've seen reports by the AG, same issues coming out in terms of supply chain management issues. Contract management process not being done correctly, tenders being issued to, or bids being issued to employees or people that are conflicted in one way or the other. The AG have always year in, year out been reporting in those issues. However, I think in terms of consequences, that's where we're seeing that there's not much happening. And I think that's where we need the culture change in our society in terms of demanding more of those people that we put in positions of authority and in positions of power to make sure that when they have contravened the requirements that they're supposed to adhere to, that they made to pay, and we as the public get to see those consequences. I think another issue has always been just the pace of accountability. So something gets reported, when it gets dealt with as a public, number one, there's not much reporting in terms of how it's been dealt with, and other times, cases often disappear without us knowing how they've been dealt with. So the pace of accountability really does need to improve, and we need to see people, I guess, sometimes in orange overalls, if I can put it like that.
All right. Let's leave it there for tonight. Saica's Project Director of Assurance, Thando Myoli.